couldn't do this if I wasn't healthy. I just could not live this life because it's already hard enough. So it's not what people think anymore, because touring is brutal. What people see on Instagram, which is the joyful part, playing on stage for those 2 hours, is not the work. You're in an airport every single day, you're traveling, you're barely getting any sleep, you're trying to stay mentally strong and physically strong. So for me,
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Tanya O'Callaghan. She's an established freelance musician, bassist, speaker, and activist with an eclectic, impressive career to date. So Tanya began crafting her skills at home, making a mark for herself on the Irish music scene early in her career, which actually my Tony Robbins coach is a musician out of Ireland as well. So we can talk into that later. You played in every band around and regularly guesting in house bands for many high profile Irish TV shows and artists. You're never afraid to make a leap of faith. Her determination and passion and talent began to pay off further when she spread her wings internationally, and she's toured and recorded and written with legends such as Whitesnakes, Bruce Dickinson, Iron Maiden, Maynard James Keenan, and many more. Tanya is also a speaker, writer, a lifelong advocate, and animal activist, and social environmental issues as well. All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life. And this is what show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. So Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the lovely intro.
Yeah, well, you've accomplished a lot. Usually when I have guests that have accomplished a lot, I was like, okay, we'll be doing an intro for the next 10 minutes. But yeah, you've done some incredible things.
I'll go make some tea while you're doing that.
Yeah, while I read it out for you. Yeah. So, we just start from the beginning for the people that are newer to you. Obviously, as I've just mentioned, you're in the world of music, but you're also vegan. I'm curious, what came first for you? Was it your passion for veganism or for music?
Oh, animals and vegan, a long, long time before music.
Okay. So how long have you been in this vegan world?
I've been a vegan my whole life, pretty much. So I was 4 when I realized what meat was, and it's my first memory. It's very vivid, and it was because where I grew up in Ireland, I'm from a small town in Ireland called Mullingar, and behind my house there was a field with cows in it, which weren't ours. Like, my family aren't farmers, but quite typical for like smaller Irish housing estates. It's surrounded by fields and there's lots of animals. And I was always just drawn to animals. I had this innate draw to animals anyway. And I named the cows and I used to think they were my pets. And then we were sitting at the dinner table and my brother told me that what was on the table was Daisy. And it actually wasn't Daisy. He was just being like, I don't even think it was beef, to be honest. But I just remember that moment being so visceral and such a shock when I realized that animals had to die for the food that was on the table. And I announced right there and then that I would be a vegetarian, because we didn't have a word for vegan. Actually, I didn't find out I was a vegan until I was about 17 or 18, because we just didn't have the language. But I naturally didn't like dairy. My mom and myself have the same thing, where most dairy products just taste sour. So I kind of just was vegan by default. So, and I've no recollection of tasting meat before that. So it's pretty much a lifelong thing. And then I didn't pick up a bass until I was almost 18.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing your brother was trying to mess with you.
I know. In hindsight, it's one of the greatest gifts he ever gave me,
Yeah. It's so interesting because, children usually won't have that filter, that kind of numbness to, they'll easily make the connection between what's on their plate and the animal that they were calling a pet or that they were playing with outside. So yeah, it was kind of a blessing that you got to make that connection early on.
100%. I'm really grateful for that happened for me early. And then, I was sort of stubborn enough to stick to my guns with it. But I think, children are innately kind and drawn to animals, and it's just because we've hyper-normalized the food system the way it is that we continue to eat them. So for me it was a no-brainer, and that was the most profound thing about thinking back. Even though I was so young, it just didn't compute.
Yeah, How did your parents handle that? Because if you think that was before veganism was cool. It's like that was before veganism was a word that people
100%.
identified with. So how did your parents handle that?
For the first few years, it was a real struggle because, they were worried because there was no information around what would happen if you stopped eating meat. And
Yeah.
my mum was getting misinformation off doctors. And there was no malice with that. There was just no education around it. As we know now that most doctors don't have any nutritional training. So back then, especially, this is 80s small town Ireland. She was being told that I would have stunted growth and that I could get all these crazy things. And one doctor even told her that I could get rickets, which I think is hilarious in hindsight because absolutely nothing got to do with meat and, protein concerns. But so they tried to, well, my mum tried to liquidize meat into my potatoes, which was quite funny because I would try to eat things and be like, why does this taste like chicken? But
Yeah.
then when by the time I was sort of 6, we had a few products on the market in Ireland. We had corn and Linda McCartney, and my dad had started bringing those home with the shop. And then I would eat everything the same, but I would just have a veggie burger or whatever. And then they kind of just realized around 5 or 6 that she seems fine. There's nothing wrong. Nothing's happening. So, and she's not going to eat it. So they kind of just gave up.
Yeah. So corn's
Then,
been around for a while.
huh?
The company Corn's been around for a while
Yes.
because I was just introduced to it recently.
Yeah, they were the OG along with Linda McCartney for me anyway. Like these are the only two. And it's funny because we associate, especially in a place like Ireland where it's like meat and potatoes, we associate having to have. Obviously now as an adult and such a foodie, you don't need that like one thing that looks like meat on the table. We have all this abundance of veggies and grains and whatever beans. But back then it was just the psychology of you have to have this one thing that replicates like a meat on the table. So it was cool to have those products back then to sort of have the transition period, mostly for everybody else, not me.
Yeah. Did it affect your parents in any way or your family in terms of like potentially having an interest towards eating less meat?
Yeah, so now very much so. For many, many years, no, because I was just the weird vegetarian kid in the neighborhood, and that was just, she just ate slightly different. But the older I got and the more into it I got, and I really started to study it as well and traveling as much as I do and food around the world and really wanting to know because I also don't want to be, going around talking about something that I don't know as much as possible about. So I really studied like the food nutrition side of things myself, just so I would know. So my parents over the years with, ailments here and there or just concerns in general about aging healthy have embraced it massively so now. So I would say my parents are about 85, 90% plant-based, and then they just eat
That's
a
awesome.
little bit of fish and meat here and there, mostly if somebody brings it, because that's a very Irish thing where, your grandmother sends up some fish or some whatever. And hey, that's okay if they're almost fully plant-based and they love it now as well. It's cool because they see my passion for it. So, and it only took 20 something years, but
You were patient with it.
yeah, well, you can imagine also in their defense, in any family's defense, I was a very full on activist for many years. I worked in an animal shelter. I was a frontline protester. I got all of that sort of out of my system young. And they had to put up with that. And I was, full on. I was a full
Yeah.
on, like pretty extreme activist for a while. So it was probably more annoying than anything in hindsight.
Hey, at least you planted a seed and you watered it. And, I, my mom's been vegan for 4 years now. I finally converted her. I've been vegan for a decade. So 6 years into it, my
Yeah.
dad, I'm still watering that seed. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm happy you got your parents to kind of be at that place.
Yeah, everybody has to come, to their own conclusion with it because human brains are not simple like that. You can't,
Yeah.
tell people what to do or expect everyone to have the same path through a journey like this. So if it takes years or if it takes, some people just go like overnight and it's great, but some people
Yeah.
don't, and that's also okay.
They rarely respond well when you tell them what to do unless they pay you to tell them what to do. That's the only time that they actually listen.
Yeah, that's true. If you have like you're paying a coach to like shout at you so that you can push yourself.
Yeah, that's the only time to listen. Besides that, people don't like to listen to other people.
Exactly.
Um, Now, you brought up eating, meat and potatoes and it being a staple dish. When I was doing your research to prepare for our interview, I stumbled upon an interview you did with a gentleman. I believe it's Derek. He makes those
Derek.
like steak,
Oh, Derek
mushroom.
Sarno, yes.
Those are crazy. Those look amazing.
Yes, I was just in London with him again last week. He is, in my opinion, I mean, biased because he's a very close friend, but one of the best chefs in the world. And what he does with mushrooms is just mind blowing. As you saw that video, it's mind blowing, and it's just like talk about culinary excellence. And if you
Yeah.
want to impress anybody, meat eater or not, you got to make one of his mushroom steaks. It's just phenomenal.
I it is on my list to give them a shot. Have you tried making one on your own without him there yet?
So that video we did, I did it just before I went on tour. So I haven't been home to do it myself. I just came home and I
Okay.
saw him again at the end of this tour because he's in London, and I did the steaks with him in London. So now that I'm home, I'm going to try and get one of the grow kits. So that's the thing with the mushrooms. Some places, obviously, it depends where you live. You can go to the market, or maybe your local store has good mushroom selection. Here, where I am in Joshua Tree area, it's not great for that. So I'm going to try to grow them, which is quite easy actually once you get the starter kit. So that's on my to-do list now that I'm home for a bit. I'm excited to become a mushroom mom.
Yeah. Wait, did you say you live in Joshua Tree?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in Thousand Oaks. We go
Oh,
to
no.
Joshua Tree often. Yeah, we went to 29 Palm like a few months ago.
Yeah, yeah. I moved out to the desert a while ago just to get away from the city. I mean, I'm gone for tour obviously half the year, so I just wanted a bit of peace and quiet.
Oh, you definitely have that in Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, transit so when vegan, basically when you were 4 and you fell into music, you mentioned the age of 18.
Hmm.
So what drew you to fall into music and to become a bass player?
So I guess true to the pattern of me being quite stubborn and following my gut instinct, what happened to me when I was 4 and that feeling with meat happened to me again when I was about 16, 17, and I was in school, and I was a very good student. I was straight A student, but I was kind of just bored by the typical format that doesn't fit every type of learner. And I made a bit of a, shocker decision to drop out of school. And that's another, God bless my parents, like they had to go through all of that again because I was so close to my final exams. But I just remember thinking, this is not really serving me, and I know I want to do this. And I was trying to ask if I could do, I wanted to study music, and I was only allowed if I played piano or violin because girls weren't allowed to play any other instrument, kind of archaic. And I wanted to do woodwork, and I wanted to study philosophy, and all of which were turned down by, the old school antiquated system that is all girls Catholic schools. So as an act of rebellion, I left and I had to do something. So I joined a course in my hometown, and you could choose between like computers, cooking, music. And I joined the music course because I had just started taking an interest in playing, and I had a few drum lessons and whatnot. And when I joined as a drummer, but I didn't have a drum kit yet, and they didn't have a good one. And then I saw a local bass player playing, and I was just mesmerized. And I picked up the bass, and the rest is history. I just got so obsessed. So I started very late, but I dove in pretty quickly, and I was in bands within months, even though I was terrible. I was like out trying to gig with my cousins and stuff.
Oh, that's how you learn. You just try to keep up with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you put pressure on yourself like that and surround yourself with the people who are going to push you and strive to be better. So I just, I didn't know at the time what I was doing. But it wasn't really on my radar. Honestly, everybody thought I'd be a vet or that I would take over the rescue shelter because I worked in a shelter in my hometown for 10 years and it was my whole life. So
Mm.
everyone really just thought it was very obvious to everyone else that the animal thing would be my path forever. So I did a bit of a 180 and became a musician. But the cool thing is that my music career, I noticed early on that it served as a platform for my biggest passion. So
Yeah. So talking about combining both of them, how has veganism impacted your musical story, your musical journey?
well, I think it's almost the reverse of it. My musical journey has given me a platform to talk about, into bigger and bigger audiences in the way that social media works, but just to allow me to sort of live by example of what I do and to show how easy it is. Like I am constantly just drilling that home. I think we overthink everything. I think both sides make it worse, just
Yeah.
infighting that goes on in our own movements. So I think that it's just been a wonderful way for me to have this platform and work with all these people and try to do little things where, I try to have as much plant-based catering on tour. And then I'm going around the world to restaurants absolutely everywhere, just showing if I can do this and I'm basically a constant nomad, then anybody can. Because one day I'm in Sarajevo or Germany or Africa or South America, and I've never found it hard to eat vegan ever, except for in the gas station stops in America. Which is
That's true. That's a hard one.
yeah, I mean, it's still totally easy to navigate once you think a little different about it. But I always find that really funny because, I'm going to some pretty remote places and some pretty meat heavy cultures, and I still find it really easy to eat because everywhere has fresh produce. And if your food is all about psychology, if you're obviously old habits die hard. So if you're used to eating a certain way, which is, most people, you think it's going to be really hard. But then when you sort of broaden your perspective, it's about abundance, plant-based, which I love. There's actually so much more. And my way of viewing it is that we only don't eat two things, meat and dairy. We eat everything else because for some reason it's kind of, oh my God, how can I do this? Because I'm not going to be able to eat anything. It's like the list is so long of what you can eat. So I really just think it's all about psychology. And I love using my traveling journey just to show that, and for people to follow if they want, and if it's not for them, they don't have to look. But I'll just be going around the world eating plants and playing rock music.
Yeah. Well, I definitely people overcomplexify the process, because that list is far longer on our side than it is on their side of what we're able to eat and not eat.
Yeah.
What is your favorite, like, how do you find some of those vegan restaurants? Do you use specific apps? Do you kind of ask the locals around? Like, what's your kind of go-to spot to discover those hidden gems when you travel?
It's a combination. Like at this point now, I've traveled so much and I'm revisiting a lot of countries I've already been in that I arrive with a list of places that I want to go back to, or I've heard through the network of restaurateurs that somewhere new has opened. Of course, I've used Happy Cow over the years, which is great for finding spots. And then a lot of what I like to do is just to wander around because I don't necessarily seek out vegan restaurants. I actually put a heavy focus on not doing that because I think that it's impactful to order, vegan dishes at a more meat centric place because it helps with the demand. So I'll often just go into places and ask, hey, super politely to the chef, can I just have that without the chicken? Or can I do, a plant-based version of it? And I've had some of the best meals of my life, ironically, in like steakhouses around the world because chefs have got excited to make something different because they're sick of and there's always great fresh produce. And ordering sides is like a trick, you can use anywhere in the world because, we're used to looking at a menu and just seeing whatever it is, like meat, seafood, whatever the dishes are laid out with. And then down in the bottom corner is this like amazing list of vegetables and baked potatoes and rices or whatever. So I sort of I don't want to always just seek out the restaurants, although of course I do go and support a lot of vegan restaurants around the world, but I like to just normalize it by going anywhere and being able to eat anywhere basically.
Yeah, I've had a very similar experience with going to non-vegan restaurants and a chef like really getting excited that he gets to be creative out of what he typically cooks.
Yeah, 100%. Chefs are artists. And if you can imagine being an artist that's making the same dish all day long, and then someone comes in and goes, hey, you've got, because you see what's on the menu, oh, do whatever you want with all those vegetables. And it's like, okay, great. There's a new canvas.
Yeah, they have a blast with it.
Yeah.
What is a place that you visited that you didn't think would be as vegan friendly, but ended up like just being like a great culinary experience?
I think one of my forever favorites is probably Tallinn, Estonia. I love Estonia, and Tallinn is a remarkable city that is medieval. So you think that it's going to be a little like old fashioned, or even if it's been like westernized, I was kind of thinking it would be the typical fast food stuff, but I was blown away by the amount of vegan restaurants and every restaurant having a lot of vegan options. And yeah, I mean, there's so many places that I was just in last week, 2 weeks ago, I was just in Turkey, and Turkish food is by default mostly plant-based, which is fantastic. So people tend to think, oh, like kebabs and stuff. Of course, there is that side of the food culture, but the way
Yeah.
that they serve is almost like a tapas of all these dishes that are all veg based. So any of that like Middle Eastern food and Egyptian type food and Lebanese, Iranian food is just phenomenal because it's just by default all veg and beans and all these like delicious flavors. So yeah, and I've had too many almost to. I'd be here all day if I was listing countries and dishes.
Yeah. Well, let's just name, like, I'm just curious as to like what would be your top three restaurants or places that you've ever eaten at.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah.
There's a lot because this is going to be hard for me because I have a lot of friends who have restaurants. So I'll just give countries
Okay.
because if I start, I'll get in trouble with my friends. I didn't name
Okay.
the restaurant, but Brazil is so easy to be vegan. So easy because Brazil is literally like, you mean you've never seen the amount of fruits and vegetables, the variety in a country like this because they obviously have the Amazon. So every breakfast buffet or every restaurant you go to is just a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. And yes, it is also a very meat heavy culture, but if you're looking at it different ways. So I think Brazil is like one of my favorites for food because it's so easy. And of course, Italy because I love carbs.
Yeah.
Italy's
Where
amazing.
in Italy?
I mean, really anywhere in Italy because it's like the more off the grid you go a little bit, but like with touring, if you're going through the major cities, for the most part, you're always going to like in Milan or Venice or wherever you are.
I would.
Um,
I was surprised with Milan because I used to live there, and
okay,
there was just all you can eat sushi everywhere. I didn't
sushi.
expect that when yeah, there was I was there maybe a decade ago, and there was like all you can eat sushi everywhere. I was so surprised by that.
Interesting. There must be a big Japanese influence there. I didn't notice that when I was there, but I probably wasn't looking because I was just seeking pasta.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't looking for the pasta. I was like, okay, I know I can get avocado rolls and sweet potato rolls and then
Yeah,
cucumber rolls. So I was just going for that.
totally, totally. And that's the thing, you can find anything, but I mean, just again, Italian cooking, a lot of it um, is just naturally plant based until you like, with pizzas and stuff and like proper Nepalese pizzas are so simple. And it's about the
Yeah.
bread and it's about the rich tomato sauces and, grilled vegetables everywhere. So I find that really, really easy as well. And I'd say third on the list is probably Turkey, actually. Um,
Okay.
Turkey is phenomenal for food because, again, it's so much flavor and so much abundance in the food that I love to try. Like, if I go out eating with friends, my immediate suggestion is, do you want to just get a bunch of stuff and share it? Because I hate getting one dish. I want to try everything. So that I love that about, cuisines like in Turkey because that's the natural way to eat. So.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well, I definitely been to Italy, but Brazil, I've heard that they changed their kind of like their food pyramid that they have here in the States. I know they've changed it almost a decade ago to put a
Yeah.
bigger emphasis on fruits and vegetables. So
Yeah, I
that's great
mean,
to hear.
the markets in Brazil are just, I mean, just for your eyes, it's stunning. I have a show called Highway to Health. I do on and off with Derek Green from Sepultura, and we filmed a lot in Brazil, and we went to the markets in Sao Paulo, and we went to markets all over. But it's just phenomenal when you walk in because you're just constantly like, "What is this? What is this?" Like the most unique fruit you've ever seen, and everything tastes incredible, and that's just on their doorstep.
What's a fruit that you ate in Brazil that you're like, I didn't even know this existed, and it's one of the best fruits I've ever had?
And there's something called atemoya, and I believe the English translation is, I think it's just the Amazon fruit or fruit of the Amazon, or it's just incredible. It's kind of like a passion fruit, but papaya is all the different types of papaya down there are incredible. Like that's a big breakfast thing, just having papaya momon and a bit of lime, and it's just so refreshing. And the mango and papaya down in Brazil are the best in the world, and that's the problem. Once you've had these fruits in Brazil, and then you try to buy them at your local store, it's like no.
It doesn't compare.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I'd love to ask you some questions in terms of the, not say the music industry, but when you think of rock star, there's a certain lifestyle that comes up in most people's head. And veganism, when you say veganism, there's a certain lifestyle that comes up when people think of that. So how have you been able to mesh both together, and how do you see some of your peers that you're working with, their lifestyle versus yours? How is that going?
Yeah, well, I'm the furthest thing from a rock star that there possibly is. I really am. Like, well, people's perception of a rock star. So I think back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was a very different scene because what was normal then was more of the party scene. It was a different industry as well. And now it's just like the business of it changed and everything became like the focus of like how hard it is to work to stay in this industry became a big reality for bands. So you can't just party endlessly. And a
Hmm.
lot of people that I've worked with got that out of their system in the 80s and 90s. And for the most part now, vast majority of bands I work with are more on a health journey now because they've either gone through that or never did. Like I work with Dee Snyder, and people always find this amazing because Twisted Sister, when they see the band, they think they're all going to be crazy and drink and drugs because of the way they look and people's judgment of it. But actually, Dee has never drank, never smoked, never taken drugs. He's a total family man. He's one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. And I love that about him. And working with him was great because it was all like we're doing yoga before the show.
Yeah.
With Whitesnake, for the most part, everybody is on a health kick anyway. David very much is on the healthier journey now. He would have had his wild days in the 80s for sure. And Bruce is remarkably healthy. Like he's a champion fencer. He works out all the time. He eats really, really clean. So it's not what people think anymore because touring is brutal. Like
I
the harsh
bet.
reality is that what people see on Instagram, which is the joyful part, which we do it for, like playing on stage for those 2 hours, is not the work. It's being on the road for 3, 4, 5 months at a time and like having literally no days off. You're in an airport every single day, you're traveling, you're barely getting any sleep. You're trying to stay, mentally strong and physically strong. So for me, I couldn't do this if I wasn't healthy. I just could not live this life because it's already hard enough on the body and on the mind. So I just think it's a no brainer to give yourself the fuel to stay able to perform and bring music around the world like that. But yeah, it's funny because people think, oh, do you party and do this? I'm like, no, I'm just like, after the show, I have a cup of tea and a bath and my veggies. And it seems quite boring, but to me, that's my version of rock star, whatever, people can think what they want and it's probably more fun in their head.
Yeah, but I feel like over the past decade, it's been a big shift in a lot of industries of focusing more on health and kind of taking care of yourself. Because I feel like you mentioned the 80s and the 90s, people went hard, people
Yeah.
abused their bodies, and now they're paying the price of it, or they know people that have paid that price, and
Yeah.
they're being a little bit more health conscious.
Yeah.
And hey, drinking tea, eating some veggies, and going to bed early isn't that bad if it gives you longevity in your career.
Yeah, exactly. And, I had times where I partied and that, and I just realized that it didn't really make me feel good the next day. And I have to be up at 6 a.m. for a lobby call to do 3 flights to get somewhere to play a show. So at a certain point, you're like, you know what works for me works for me. And hey, no judgment, because I have loads of friends that are still well able to party, and I'm totally jealous of it.
Yeah. What are I love to know some of your hacks then, because again, I travel maybe every 2 weeks or so for conferences or shoots or things like that,
Mm,
and I get tired. I come home and I'm like, yes, I get to sleep in my bed. I get to
mm,
record in my studio. I get to have my space, cook my food. But I
yeah,
can't even imagine. I think you mentioned before we started recording, this is your first time home in 5 months.
yeah.
So how do you manage the time zone differences, the lack of sleep, the trying to find food, and trying to take care of yourself throughout, like, for example, that last 5 month span?
Yeah, so it's, I always bring healthy snacks on travel days. So because you never know what's going to happen. So I have like my go-to snacks for actual travel days. If we know we're not going to be at a venue for catering or I don't have time to go to a restaurant, I'll bring like, a bag of mixed nuts, dried mango, some dates, peanut butter, stuff like that. So I always have something healthy to fuel myself. I'm a big hydrator. I drink a lot of herbal tea. One like lesson I learned the hard way was cutting caffeine at a certain time because I love my
Mm,
coffee, and I was just realizing that with not enough sleep and trying to do this coffee thing too much into the day. So I allow myself one or two in the morning, but then it's like a hard cut off at 11 or 12. And then I switch on. So every flight, I have tea bags in every pocket of every bag, of every case, lots of herbal teas.
Is it because it makes you anxious, or because it affects your ability to sleep later on?
Both. So I was realizing, like, I was on tour years ago in China with the river dance, and I gave myself caffeine toxicity. And I never want to
Oh,
feel that again. Yeah, it was wild. And when I was with the medics, it was basically I was burning my adrenal glands out because you're so tired and you think that, oh, if I drink coffee, and all you're doing is like constantly blocking your adenosine receptors, and then at night, obviously, you can't sleep. But and I just never liked that push pull. So now I try to really listen. Like if I've always had problems with sleep, and it's something I'm working on, partially because I'm constantly on the move. But with the sleep thing, I've learned over the years that I'm really trying to implement is not to panic over when I don't sleep enough, because it can be quite daunting when you're like, I'm exhausted, I have to perform now. So I'll just try to like breathe, lay down if I have a few minutes here or there, and then know that I'm going to try and catch up on sleep the next night. So I think adding insult to injury by trying to drown yourself in coffee is something
yeah.
that I learned, I still love it. I still allow myself coffee because for me, it's like the ritual of it in the morning. But I don't need it after a certain point, especially if I haven't got enough sleep, because that's just not good for your body to be like doing that push pull. So yeah, they're kind of my go-tos. But on the road when we're touring at a professional level like that, we have catering, we have all that. So my rider, which is your request for backstage, my backstage rider, I've had the same rider for probably 6 or 7 years, and it's just sparkling water, blueberries, blackberries, herbal tea, and then if we're doing cooked food, if we're not going to dinner, I always just have like rice, broccoli, beets, stuff like that, because I want to make sure that, because you're obviously in different countries every day, that it's something pretty generic that you can get everywhere instead of requesting like seitan and
Yeah.
tempeh this and whatever. So yeah, I try to have like a simple, clean rider always, so that I know when I get to the venue I'm going to have something to eat that's healthy. That's pretty much my top hacks. And I do yoga most show days, even if it's just for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just to stretch out, because the physicality of stage is quite a lot actually when you're doing it, for 50, 60 shows in a row. Your body starts to feel it.
Yeah. So is it like you'll do a show and then you'll fly somewhere else and you'll do another show that next night? Is that kind of how it goes, or do you have like a few days in between?
It depends on the tour. So this past tour, we didn't really have any down days because we were trying to fit it in, because Bruce has just gone back to Iron Maiden right now. So he only had a 10-day gap after. So we actually did a pretty intense back to back. So we would arrive in a city, sound check, show, go to bed for a few hours, next day fly, land, sound check, show, go, 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 go. And then in some places you're on a bus. With some tours, with Whitesnake, we always tend to have a day off because David likes vocal rest. So we'd get in, have a day, and then show, which is much easier on the body. But some tours you just have to, like, you're trying to hit a schedule and it's nonstop.
Yeah. It seems exhausting. I'm
It
like
is.
thinking about like those short hours of sleep. So I'm happy you're back home, that you got to be able to get some rest.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about the animal activism and animal rights. So you mentioned earlier that music has allowed you to have this platform to kind of share your message. What is one of your favorite ways to kind of do that, and what is the message that you're trying to pass off to your listeners?
I think just normalizing how easy it is to have an impactful change by what you choose to eat every day. Like, I think it's so profound, the simplicity of that. And I'm still involved in behind the scenes in loads of things here and there. I've done a lot of the campaigns, and I did a lot of that back in the day. But I think the beauty of social media now is, and the most response that I get from followers over the years and new fans through all these different bands, is basically just like, wow, this food looks great, I'm going to try and make that. And then it's like this thing of just normalizing it, because I think the vegan movement can be quite detrimental to itself. It can be very, like, I know the passion. I come from a whole background in that. I understand the frustration, but sometimes when you're trying to bombard information down through everybody, is through the screen, and all this keyboard warrior stuff is going on, I just don't think it's helpful. I
Yeah.
know I understand the urgency, and I've been there with my activism, but traveling the world and my unique perspective of having been all over the world many times, most people meet the conversation open mindedly when it's done through food, especially. Because if you're just bringing someone for a meal or cooking together or showing someone how easy it is to, switch just that one or two things and then it's vegan. But because I also think, obviously, I'm a proud ethical vegan in the sense, but I do think the label doesn't help. And that applies to everything: politics, religion, food, whatever. I really am not a fan of labels, and I would like to just see it become normal that we all try a little harder to thread kinder on this planet while we're here. So yeah, that's kind of, I just really try to take the approach of normalizing it. It's just, it's not hard. And even if you can do 50%, that's cool.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
feels like you've softened your approach and are starting to maybe put a bigger emphasis on leading by example and kind of introducing people as they kind of come into your world through food, through restaurants, and through cooking.
Yeah.
But I feel like this activism phase, I feel like everyone goes through it at the
Mhm.
beginning. You become like an evangelist. You're like, I'm going to save all of you, right?
Totally, totally. But there's, and one of my favorite things to do, and I work with a couple of different foundations, and I make all these really unique connections around the world. And some are corporate, and some are in the food space, and some are so far from veganism, but like really good, smart people in like tech industries or whatever. And I do a lot of connecting of people because I'm like, I think you guys would work really well together. I think you guys could maybe have an impact here. And I just sort of offer myself and my services to go and talk to groups. Like that's a lot of the speaking stuff I've done over the years, but like corporate groups going, hey, are you, all these typical um, diseases that people are suffering with, non-communicable diseases, that it's like, this does not need to be in your life. If you just make these
Yeah.
few switches. So I do loads of different approaches, but I don't necessarily need to post about it and like do my social media in that way. For social media, I just really want to show how great the food is and all these amazing chefs that I've collaborated with. And, just again, like I always say, if I can do it and I travel nonstop, then it's pretty easy for anybody to do it. And it's very affordable. And I just think at the end of the day, like there's just so much violence in the world. And one thing that we can decide right now to not support is animal agriculture. But in saying that, we have to also be conscious of helping farmers transition so it doesn't become a battle between vegans and farmers. It's about shifting the system. And I think that that's a beautiful space that people can collaborate on more and more. And I think that's exciting. That's starting to happen. And I'm just hoping that like it really ramps up faster.
Yeah, I'd love to dive a little bit into that part of your life. Just out of curiosity, is that where you met Bobby?
Oh, Bobby Sood. Yeah, yeah. Well, I would have
Yeah,
met Bobby at the pig vigils originally in downtown LA because I still, try to show up for as many events as I can. So I think I'm sure we probably first met at the pig vigils, and I obviously saw Bobby's photography and
yeah,
was blown away because it's such again, a simple way to use a skill like that to show people the eyes of these animals. And posting them, but it's, people are so weird, but they just don't want to see, they don't want to look. But
yeah,
his photography is so great like that because there's, if you look really fast, you're not going to see the difference of a dog or a pig or a cow. You just see these sad eyes.
yeah,
um, so yeah, I would have met Bobby probably at the pig vigils, and then we were just, the whole vegan events group that goes on out here. I'm sure we just, over the year, we've known him for years. I can't even remember how many years ago I met him at that. So yeah.
yeah. So, what are some of your favorite memories from those times or stories that are like, that was such an iconic moment where we went to save, you know, chickens or cows? Because I obviously had Bobby on the show, I had Alexandra Paul as well, who's a big activist too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, most of my hands on activism was back in Ireland. So I did 10 years hands on in a rescue shelter in my hometown, just outside my hometown. So we would have had a lot of like really profound transformations of severely neglected and abused animals. So I saw endless stories of that. I worked there from I was 8 to 18. I was the head volunteer there. So I did a lot of rescue and rehab. we took animals out of awful hoarding situations. We got calls out to cruelty that no one should ever see. And that was really, really fucking hard. And I spent a long time doing that. But to see the transformation then when you had these animals that were terrified of humans because of what had happened, but then with like
Yeah.
just kindness and patience and this slow willingness to let them, come back to themselves. So we had that with horses and donkeys, cats, dogs, birds, you name it. We had like at any given time we had at least 50 or 60 dogs, and then we had anything down in the paddock where it was like sheep, and we rescue cow at one stage, horses, chickens, geese. But there's so many stories, like there's so many, and I fostered a lot. And when I first came out to LA, I used to foster quite a lot of kittens and stuff. And you'd have these little kittens that were on the brink of death with parvovirus or that, and seeing them come back is always amazing. But yeah, it's like I have so many good and very hard memories of the rescue chapters of my life. So
Yeah.
someday maybe I'll write a book on all of it.
Yeah. Well, when you do come back on the show, I'll help you. I'll help you promote it.
Thank you.
Um, so do you feel that age from 8 to 18 working in that shelter was just, an extra confirmation of the choices that you had made and how you had chosen to live your life and the type of, food you've chosen to? Do you feel like it just kind of strengthened your choice a lot more?
Yeah, they were very formative years because I learned incredibly hard work. Like it is no joke working with that many animals. Like the amount
I
of
bet.
labor that goes into it is very, very physical. And you're looking after hundreds of animals basically, and you're out doing these rescues and you're dealing with people and you're dealing with animals all day. So just like sheer hard work actually was very good in hindsight to be doing that so young. Because there's no glamour in it. Like my dad would drop me off and he'd just sort of laugh that like I'm basically going to spend the day cleaning up dog shit,
Yeah.
eating
Hey,
animals.
I grew up on a farm. I know what that's like, so I get it.
Yeah, yeah. And then walking like 50 or 60 dogs and dealing with the sick animals and whatever we're doing. I was essentially training to be an assistant veterinarian at that stage already. I was pretty hands on with
Okay.
it. But so the hard work aspect of it, but it just was very like it was a no-brainer. Like I said, I'm very lucky in the sense that I've always known what my path is or whatever you want to call it, because as soon as that like whole 4-year-old me, whatever was going on the day that I found out about meat, that epiphany that day was just like light switch goes on, and then this is what I have to do. So they were definitely very formative years, and but I also learned through like, because I did a lot of protests, I did a lot of from banned from the fur shops. We were doing all that stuff back in the day. Um, that there might be another approach as well, because
Yeah.
and there's a time and a place for all sorts of activism. I think there's room for everybody at the table, but the more I started to travel, especially in my music career, because you can get very weighed down in that type of activism. Like I was noticing by the time I was 14, 15, 16 that I was suffering what now we know as a type of depression, because it's very hard to see that. You're going
I
undercover,
bet.
you're seeing a lot of cruelty, and you're just you're just kind of putting blinkers on because you have to for the animal's sake. But it's like, okay, then you want to show the world and the world's not listening. So it can be very frustrating when you're like, why is everybody looking away from this? And you're looking at it going, how people can't be okay with this. And most people aren't. So
It takes
you have to
strength to
keep
look.
striking that balance is very important.
Yeah, it takes strength to look at that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
very confronting for the majority of people.
Yeah, and if everybody, as Paul McCartney said, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be a vegetarian, because once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. Like you just can't. It's brutal. So I always say, like, if you can look and then you make your own decision, no judgment, but just don't look away.
Yeah, which I'm with you. Everyone would convert. Everyone would transition to veganism for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned working in a shelter and seeing animals turn around and the pleasure of that. Had the pleasure of experiencing that. My wife and I adopted a little dog from the meat market in Korea,
Wow.
and we can tell that he was very abused when he came in, because any men that came near him, he would crunch down, he would pee, and he would go and isolate himself. we've had him for 3 years now, and now he's joyful when he sees you and he jumps and he doesn't pee on the ground, which is great. A lot less cleaning,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it's such a beautiful feeling to like see him get excited and actually be happy and enjoy life. It is a cool thing to witness.
Oh yeah, I think animals are just so wonderful like that. They don't, tend to hold grudges the way humans do. And, they should really hate us. And for some reason, they're still kind and wonderful. And I think we can learn a lot from animals. And,
Definitely.
just because we can reign dominion over a species doesn't mean we should. And I just think that it would really stand to the human race overall if we were kinder to the most vulnerable. Obviously, that applies to our fellow humans as well. But if we know it's so easy to not support this one thing. Like there's so many problems in the world that feel so hard to have an impact on, and it just becomes overwhelming. And mass media is just like bombarding us with all this cruelty in the world. But the fact that we go to the store every day or however many days you do your shopping and you can just choose in that moment to not support this cruelty, and it's as
Yeah.
simple as not picking it up and buying it. And then yes, you have to do like a little bit of learning how to cook something new, but I just think that's so powerful. And the more and more people do that, and however long it takes you, even if you're doing your meat-free day or 2 meat-free days or whatever, like every step is towards less and less cruelty in this world. So
Yeah, and it's frustrating when if you really simplify everyone's answer when you ask them why they want to continue eating meat, it's usually just because I like the taste of it.
yeah, and
It's
now we
not
have
even
cellular agriculture coming, which is phenomenal.
yeah, yeah. And you got amazing food like Derek makes. Again,
Oh,
I want to give those a shot because they look
do it.
incredible.
And the thing is, like, once you can source the actual, their lion's mane
Yeah.
that I cooked with Derek, and they're like his most famous steak. Obviously, you can do stuff with the oyster mushrooms, but it's actually quite simple after that. It's just about having those few seasonings around. It's getting the right mushrooms, and it's just phenomenal. And it's so fun to have these like unique, really creative dishes. And once you get into like, I love to cook. Now, granted, I have these amazing chef friends that make me look terrible in the kitchen, but that's the fun thing about cooking. Like it's just being creative. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's just super easy. And I find food like it's nice to be home now because I've been on the road so much. I find it kind of a meditative experience to just take out, half an hour to make something and know that I made that and I seen all the ingredients going in. And it's by no means complicated in my case because I get hungry and I'm impatient with cooking. I just want to eat the food now. So
Yeah.
I'm not doing long, complicated recipes by any means.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of people's fear is that it looks complex to make a vegan dish, but it's actually really simple.
Yeah.
And I agree with you for Derek's for his dishes. It's the sourcing that's the issue. It is hard to find a big piece of lion's mane mushroom. I've been
Yeah.
looking. I've
Yeah.
been looking for it and I've been able they're pretty tiny, the ones that they usually sell. You can't really make like a steak or a big dish out of it. So
Yeah.
if you find a source near Joshua Tree, LA, let me know because I'll definitely buy
Exactly. And
some.
I think just you can get the starter kits. And Derek just released a little movie on YouTube there, actually, everyone should go and watch about transitioning a chicken farm to a mushroom farm. It just went out a few days ago and it's absolutely gorgeous. And it just, I would say, watch it, share it. It's phenomenal. And it gives a lot of hope too, because that's such a great way, because we have the infrastructures in place with these farming facilities that instead of farming, continuing to farm animals, which is obviously harming the planet and the animals, and it's just not a great industry for farmers. They're kind of wrung by the neck financially. That you can use the space that's existing and the infrastructure and transition to a more sustainable and more profitable food source.
Yeah. Well, I will check it out and I'll put the link down below for everyone that wants to listen to it as well. I'll find a way to get connected with Derek because he seems like a really cool guy to chat with. And I feel like a lot of my members would love this style of cooking because a lot of them are transitioning and they're like,
Yeah,
I still want that. Some of them are newer. They're doing because of high
yeah,
cholesterol, high blood pressure. And they're like, that steak though. I'm like, yeah, mushrooms. Mushroom can do the thing, but you have to do
yeah,
it properly.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah.
connect you guys.
Awesome. So I'd love to ask you about, so obviously you're promoting veganism online, you're touring a lot. So I'm sure you get to meet a lot of incredible people that follow you online as you're touring. Do you ever have meet a fan that just had that was inspired by your vegan journey and was able to kind of see some major changes in their life?
Yeah, a lot actually, and that's why I continue to post about food. I get hundreds of messages about people sending me videos and pictures of them trying to cook something, and or lovely messages about I turned plant based because I saw all your food posts, or I also get loads of like, "Fuck you, stop posting about food," but whatever.
There's
I just
always those people.
I just want to see you play bass. I'm like, okay, well then see me play bass and don't look at the food. But no, I really do, and that's what encourages me to, because I'm actually quite an introvert off the road. Like, I'm an introverted extrovert. Like, people find that hard to understand because they see me on stage and it's like this performance me or whatever. But I like to keep social media. I wouldn't have it just for me, because I've had this huge influx of messages over the years, thousands and thousands and thousands of people saying they're eating more plant-based, or they love the food posts, or they had diabetes and now it's gone. Or because I also post a lot about like my friends who are experts in these fields, and just trying to show people, hey, because a lot of people have stomach issues or heart issues. I'm like, hey, go follow such and such because all these cool doctors. So yeah, I think that is so inspiring to me, actually. So that's why I love it. And I try to answer as many people as I can. And I just find it wonderful. I just find it wonderful that we have this platform that, you don't know the person, but you've connected through this like chat about food, and that has helped their life and their health or whatever. And then I just feel like it's a beautiful butterfly effect, because if even a handful of people decide to go plant-based, and then their family embrace it, and then it just keeps rippling out. And I think that's a really great way to all influence each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it just kind of leads down to what you've been doing, which is leading by example.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
people notice it was like, hey, how is she able to do all of these things and eat this way?
yeah, because I try not to come at it from like an agenda. This is just my life. This is what I do. I've been vegan. That's the label I'm given my whole life, but to me it's just normal. It's like, this is how, and the novelty of who I play with and what I do, that's cool. But I just want it to be seen as, it's so easy, it's so healthy, it's so good for the planet, it's so good for your own health. And again, if I can do it, anybody can.
Yeah. Well, talking about anybody can, question for you. What are some pieces of advice that you love to give to aspiring musician that wants to continue to perform at their art and that kind of want to start this vegan lifestyle, but they're kind of unsure where to start?
With the music, you mean?
Yeah, with the music and the veganism together.
Yeah, well, I mean, with music, with any art, I always tell people to, well, A, do it because you love it, because it's a very tough industry and there is no magic formula. Like, what people don't see is the years and years and years and years of rejection, horrible gigs, low paid gigs, like huge hustle. There was at least 5 years of my move to LA that was just a constant scramble. And then eventually you're seen by the right person and a gig happens. But, that doesn't happen for everybody. And there was like many, many years of struggle in my story. And it's still the music industry. Like, it's not easy. It's not, people think you join these big bands and then that's it. You have six houses in the
You made
hills.
it.
It's not, I'm a freelance musician. I'm a hired gun. So it's like, first of all, getting it out of your head that like you need to make it, because making it was different for everybody, but doing it because you love it. But I think the most important thing for musicians, especially, is just to go out and play. You have to play live, play with as many people as you can, go to jam nights, collaborate online, like put yourself out there if you want to do this, because it's like anything in life. If you want to achieve something, you should surround yourself with people who are already doing what you're trying to achieve, and just be a sponge of like absorbing what that is. So that's what I was doing. I decided to move to LA, which was terrifying. I didn't know anybody, but I knew the industry. Big heartbeat of the industry was in LA. So it's like, well, I have to go to where the people are doing this. And I just kept knocking on doors and showing up and playing gigs and, joining every band imaginable. And then eventually it's like you're so absorbed in it, something can shift. But
Hmm.
also, it doesn't have to be your sole income or earner. Like art, you should be doing it because you want to do art. It's perfectly okay to have another job and play music. I think people put a lot of pressure on it becoming their sole thing. And I'm in like the 1% that get to do this. It's very hard. So it's like a reality check first is a good idea. And one of the biggest
Yeah.
skills is actually relationships with people, because of course you have to have the talent and be able to play. That's a given. But you have to be, if you want to tour the way that we tour at this level, you want to be able to get on with people and be easy to work with, be punctual, be reliable, like all that stuff. There is no time for egos and all that crap. It just, you're gonna be dropped out of the industry pretty fast. So, there's a couple of aspects for it. But with veganism, I think I just find it so easy. I'm just like, just do it. Just like, it's exciting. Go on YouTube and type in easy, healthy vegan recipes. Use the word easy, use the word healthy, and you're just going to get a plethora of information, and just explore with it. If you're concerned about health stuff, if the trans, because it is different for everybody, and everybody's different and has different ailments or medical conditions. Just, there's experts all over the internet, and there's also pseudoscience all over the internet as well. But really, do your research.
Yeah.
Go to like, we have so many great resources now. It's amazing with plant-based health. Like, I love Simon Hill's channel, because Simon is just a wealth of information that brings in all sides. So he's very neutral like that, and I really admire that about his work. So his podcast is fantastic, and obviously Rich Roll has all these incredible guests. All the doctors, Dr. Gareth Davis, Dr. Alan Desmond, like all of the guys that are just incredible sources. If anyone's doubting making the transition to whole foods plant based, just do your research. Just do your research and jump in. And the huge likelihood is that you're going to feel better. So,
Yeah. That's the side effects.
yeah. Most people I know that the transition to vegan later, their only regret is not doing it sooner, which
Yeah.
is such a common theme when I talk to people about it. They're like, I can't believe I thought it was going to be so hard, because it's you. I feel sorry for the world, because we are bombarded with marketing of all the fast food. You don't think it's influencing you, but it absolutely is. It's everywhere. So I'm lucky that I've been doing this my whole life. Like, and it's just, I'm looking going, why does everybody think this is hard? But I've been doing it my whole life. So I also have to be empathetic to the fact that it's not as easy for everyone to just switch when you have all these habits. So,
Yeah, I think the convenience factor is what gets a lot of people,
yeah,
and they think that it's more complex than it is. But there's also this, unhealthier alternative that is a lot more convenient for them to go
yeah,
for, and that's kind of what gets people stuck, I think.
right, true. But you can be a
Yeah.
convenience vegan too.
Oh, especially nowadays, especially if you live in LA, there's so many options now. You ever
Yeah.
been to Mackin Sushi in Agora Hills?
Oh yes, I have. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Very good.
delicious
Very
vegan
good, very
sushi.
creative. It's been a while, but yeah, I remember going there. Um, Actually, I went there. Did I go there last year as well? Yeah, it's fantastic. I remember that place now. It's very
Yeah,
creative. I love that. And that's the other thing about like vegan restaurants. They tend to be very creative. So it's inspiring. Then you're like, I would never have thought of that dish. I'm gonna go home and try and make it now.
yeah. I live 10 minutes from there, so
I
my wife
am
and I go
being
there
jealous. There
every
is
week.
nothing out here.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when I went out to Joshua Tree. Yeah. Well, if ever you're back out here, would love to catch up at Mac and Sushi. Again,
Absolutely.
great spot. Um, so I'd love to ask you, one last questions. What is a project that you're currently working on that you're excited, and that you would love some support and love on?
Yeah, so I'm about to partake on one of the biggest, most exciting journeys I think yet. It's a documentary I'm doing with veterans. And it is inspired by my neighbor Bob, who's a 75-year-old Vietnam vet who's been through more shit that is comprehensible to most humans. And he's just a phenomenal human being. And we became close through a lot of trauma that he went through after I moved here. And it sort of triggered me thinking like, I need to do more. This is so unfair. This demographic is so neglected when it comes to health. And it's really, really frustrating. And I've had a lot of veterans show up in my life for one reason or another. And I keep seeing this same pattern of pill for every ill culture and, no depth of health when it comes to diet and lifestyle. So I decided to pool my resources with like doctors and some celebrity friends and specialists in all walks of life. And I'm getting a group of veterans together, and we're going to document a whole transition of getting their bloods, their biomarkers, the whole shebang, and get them onto a whole foods plant-based diet, but also big focus on gut and mental health, because I just think it's so heartbreaking that these men and women who are suffering these scars of war, which most of us could never even begin to understand with the PTSD and all that, they shouldn't also be suffering reversible, preventable diseases like diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, obesity. And this is something that can be easily helped if people embrace it. So I'm just starting now. I just started fundraising and I just started doing all that fun stuff in the background. So it's a long project. Like these things take a couple of years. But Bobby helped me with some of the beginning trailer stuff, and we're just chipping away at it slowly now that I'm back, because I've been like itching to get going, but obviously I've been on tour. So I'm really excited to do that because, I think that it can help a lot of people to take their health into their own hand. And it's just heartbreaking to see anybody, but especially in this demographic that are already suffering all these other things, that they shouldn't have to have this on top as well. And there's just not enough resources, but there is cool infrastructure out there. So I'm starting to like connect the dots with a lot of the clinics and stuff. And that's really, really, really exciting. So that'll probably be my next couple of years, to be honest, in between touring. But I'm going to have a heavy focus on that now. So I'm excited about that. And it's
That's
like
beautiful.
kind of scary to talk about it because you're like, oh, it's reality now.
it's out there. And again, you have Bobby on your side. He's a great man. I'm excited to kind of watch the progression of that. Do you have an idea what it's going to be called yet, or where people can get information, or basically just stay tuned on your
Just
socials?
stay tuned, because I don't really want to go there yet with like giving too much information, but it has a name, but I'm going to keep that one, secret
for now. Awesome. Great. Well, so for everyone listening, I'm going to put Tanya's, your Instagram and all your social media down below so people can stay tuned for your project for whenever you launch it. And whenever you write that book, would love to have you back on the show as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I want to say massive thank you, Tanya, for your time. Again, I know you haven't been home in 5 months. You're jet lagged from traveling. So I really appreciate you making time out of your busy schedule. You did phenomenal. You can't even tell that you're jet lagged. You're doing great.
I think I'm just constantly jet lagged. That's the good thing. You're just,
So that's your norm now. So then it's easy to manage.
It's kind of my norm, but it is what it is. So I'll be home now before I take off to do all this stuff for the documentary. I'll be home for a couple of weeks. So I'm just going to try and be slow, and I'm going to go cook for Bob now, because that's what I do when I'm home. So
awesome.
We're going to sit and plan our next steps and whatnot. And then just, loads of boring adulty stuff that I don't do on tour. I got to go through the mail and bring out the trash and go to the store.
Yeah.
It's like the crash back to reality after touring festivals for 5 months.
Hey, that's a whole other conversation as well, to kind of navigate that balance of like, let's say, the high life and the normalcy of life that you have to go back to, and balancing that.
I call it tour re-entry.
Tour re-entry. Well, you're used to it. If you gave it a name, you've probably been through it a few times at this point.
I recognized it, and I was like, this needs a name.
Yeah, amazing. Well, so again, Tanya, thank you very much again for being on the show. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. Again, all the links are going to be down below, and also for the documentary she mentioned for you guys to go and check out. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you.